When the world learned of Joanie Lamb's unexpected diagnosis, everyone waited in silence. However, no one anticipated her husband to come forward with a confession that would deeply disturb every viewer. His voice quivered as he spoke. That is the truth about what he would do to you. What he disclosed wasn't merely emotional, but it stung deeply and revealed the truth of their private conflict for the first time. It shook our confidence in their future plans. Initially, it was not given much consideration. Whenever Joanie Lamb appeared on film, she wore a smile, dynamic, brimming with positive reinforcement. People trusted her voice and relied on her messages of optimism for years, welcoming her into their homes through dire. Therefore, it appeared innocuous when she skipped a couple of shows. Perhaps a break was in order for her. Perhaps she was on a journey. Who among us doesn't need a break every now and then? Months passed, though, and the stillness became increasingly noticeable. Her absence from major broadcasts, yearly events, and other occasions where her presence was guaranteed was noticed by fans. At the time, when she did show up, I had an uneasy feeling. Her expression betrayed a weariness that went beyond that of a long day, a weariness that seemed to reside in her very bones. She lost the radiance in her eyes. She still had a partial smile on her face. People watching could feel it. A shift had occurred. In the beginning, social media was filled with polite inquiries. How is Joni doing? Does anybody know what's happening? However, the length of time there was no sound, the theories emerged from those inquiries. It was assumed by some that she was leaving the ministry. There were others who were afraid of getting sick. Family issues were whispered about by a few. The rumors intensified since Dyer largely chose to remain silent. I started watching her most recent appearances again, try to find any hints. Did she flinch? Was her pace noticeably slower than normal? Had she altered her voice? Every little thing became proof. The suspiciousness grew with each hesitation. Her non-attendance at important Daystar events was detrimental. Because of Joni, even though they had never met, her fans felt a special bond with her. It was as if a close friend had abruptly ceased phoning, so her silent departure seemed intimate. It went beyond simple interest. Fear, anxiety, and perhaps even some sadness pervaded. For the simple reason that you don't merely see, you feel when someone you relied on to be a beacon of hope and support starts to gradually disappear. Doubtful things were going on, and everyone knew it in their heart. Doug Weiss had never aspired to be a star-spangled man. Silently by Joanie Lamb's side, he had stood for years, never the center of attention, yet steadfastly providing unwavering support whenever needed. He was simply that way. Therefore, I didn't want to cause a scene or garner attention when I chose to speak up. Reason being alone was becoming too taxing. So they broke the stillness. The mysterious disappearance of Joni has been the subject of rumors for months. Her bright-eyed, enthusiastic leadership of the Dyer Network was something her admirers had become accustomed to witnessing nearly daily. Trademark elegance and vitality. However, she began to progressively fade from sight after that. Minimal appearances, fewer shows, and then none at all. Many assumed she was on vacation, or a trip at first, yet the length of time without speech. Conjecture grew increasingly unnerving as time went on. Doug, who knew the truth but chose to remain silent, observed the events unfolding in the shadows. He was concerned about Joni's right to privacy. The events that had transpired to her were still not fully sunk in. Both of them were. Neither of them had anticipated the fragility that had set in with her health. It was verified by the doctors. A rare autoimmune disease that gradually sapped her vitality, weakened her joints, and muted her voice. She would eventually feel relatively normal. Getting out of bed would be an uphill battle the next day. But how can you convey that idea to the general public? How can you break the news to millions of people that the courageous woman they admired was now struggling for survival? Doug had no idea until, when I sat in a peaceful room with a reliable companion one afternoon. He released his grip at last. He was taken aback that it was made public. He merely spoke, attempting to comprehend everything. However, when asked, "How is Joni really doing?" he was no longer able to provide the predictable response. As his voice quivered and his eyes grew moist, The words escaped him. "She's sick," he stated plainly. After hearing, "She's really sick," the barrier dissolved. As Doug watched the woman he loved fall into a struggle he couldn't rescue, he began to speak, not in his role as a public figure or spokesperson, but in his one as a husband. He went into detail about her gradual deterioration, the days when she felt weak before lunch, and the mornings when she sobbed because she realized she couldn't conceal her feelings. Not now. Joni, he said, had pushed herself to remain visible to her team and audience in an effort to keep going. She bravely made it to the studio, taped brief bits while smiling despite the pain, but she would rely on Doug to help her return to the car when the lights went out. She recalled the times he found her lying awake in the dark, praying in a way she couldn't articulate, with an aching body. Quietly, he mentioned that she preferred no one to be concerned. Becoming weak was something she wanted to avoid. They had exhausted all possible options, Doug conceded. Medications, experts, therapies, and requests for prayers. While some things did assist, they couldn't restore her completely. Gradually, she had to withdraw from the life she cherished. The performances, the gatherings, the journeys, the sermons. For her, that was more than simply a job. She felt her true purpose and identity in it. The difficulty arose from that very fact. Joni was unwell on more than one level. Deep within her, she felt anguish. A sense of betrayal washed over her. Her group, her fans, and the legacy of her husband Marcus. According to Doug, he would tell her daily that she had contributed more than most people could in 10 lifetimes and that she had failed no one, but she still had trouble believing it. At the time, unlike a press release or prepared film, Doug went public with a confession when he eventually did it. Someone just so happened to videotape and share this really candid discussion, and there was a lightning-fast reaction. A few were taken aback. Some were happy to hear the truth eventually. However, the identical pain was felt by almost everyone. This is the kind of sadness you feel when someone you've looked up to for a long time suddenly shows their humanity in the worst possible way. Doug admitted that keeping it a secret for so long caused him to struggle with guilt. Long. In any case, Joni had requested solitude. She needed space to think about what this next phase of her life would entail, to recover, and to digest everything that had happened. She was unprepared to part with the platform she had created. They were both wrong. However, when thinking about, as the whispers mounted, Doug sensed the moment had come. This is not done to shield him from criticism, but rather provide an opportunity for others to pray, gain insight, and really walk alongside them rather than simply observe. The most impactful aspect of Doug's confession had nothing to do with health. The subject was love. Every word carried that tone. His tone betrayed his weariness, his pauses his anguish, and his dedication his unwavering will. He lamented that he was unsure of tomorrow's plans. But I am present. Well, I'm beside her, regardless of the outcome. Doug Weiss bestowed to humanity an uncommon gift with that. This is more than just an update. It's a window into the hidden struggle that countless people endure. His speech was devoid of any, staged for religious or celebrity performances. The man who released him stood steadfastly in the midst of the storm, his grip on his wife's hand unwavering. That's the saddest part, and that is the beauty of it. No one could warn Doug Weiss of the tempest that would ensue when he finally told Joanie Lamb the truth about her health. What began as an intimate confession soon expanded into something far more significant, something that is unruly, chaotic, passionate, and even harsh at times. Shortly after he spoke, became public, the web sprang alive. Screens, pulpits, podcasts, and social feeds were all touched by the tale that had been simmering for months. That Doug had said softly was irrelevant. His lack of a big declaration was irrelevant. That needed to be attended to. A lack of solutions has already starved the people. Now they had a diagnosis, an explanation, something solid to cling to, the true cause of Joni's absence. The rumors, however, persisted unchanged. On the contrary, it doused them with petrol. There were headlines that lauded Joni's courage. She was said by others to have hid the facts for far too long. Some media sites covered her story, the hardships of living with a chronic illness, in a kind and considerate way, while some dissected, in great detail, openly questioning whether this was all there was to the story or if more was being withheld behind closed doors. Controversy erupted in the comment pages. There was a group of people who had been watching Daystar for decades and thought they knew Joni. They prayed for her, wrote lengthy words of support, and fought valiantly for her. She's dedicated herself fully to her ministry. As one concerned citizen put it, she deserves peace and privacy. Let her rest. That wasn't how everyone perceived it. Another set of voices became increasingly audible. There were those who felt duped. The length of time it had taken for the truth to emerge baffled them. According to them, Joni had established her reputation by being open and honest about her life with her audience, people who observe. Since when has there been no response? Why months of uncertainty, no episodes, and mysterious cameos? You can't appear on screen asking people to trust you, then go radio silent when something serious happens. You can't ask for donations and do both at the same time, read one irate post. It was severe, but it wasn't the only one. That's not leadership. That's avoidance. There was an immediate schism in social media. Those who will always have Joni's back, and those who are calling for justice and transparency. Being forthright, the gap became wider as time went on. During Bible studies, members of the church started arguing about the matter. To talk about on air, podcast hosts asked special guests. The makers of TikTok pieced together samples of Joni's older sermons with updated comments. Are Christian leaders to behave in this way? They inquired. How will this impact religious media in the years to come? Not even the atheist world failed to notice. Various news sources, reports of Johnny's condition, and its broader ramifications began to circulate within the religion community. Did Dyer have what it took to step down as leader? Without its most famous member, how would the network fare? If the platform's creators had hoarded something so significant, would viewers have faith in them? Kept secret for a long time? Out of nowhere, the plot expanded beyond a woman's struggle for her health. The topic shifted to the expense of influence and the art of image control. The Lambs felt the heat behind the scenes. Employees at Dyer started answering emails and phone calls continuously. A few viewers were hoping for some new information. Others were seeking reimbursement for recent contributions. Joni was unable to comply with certain people's demands that she create a public video outlining everything. Quietly attempting to manage her condition at home, she avoided. She formally had complete control over the cameras. Even with his best efforts, Doug was unable to protect her from the den. An overwhelming amount of emails reached his mailbox. News outlets contacted. People he hadn't spoken to in a long time contacted him. Not all of them were helpful. The most worrying aspect was that the storm was engulfing even Joni's children. People were commenting on their own social media accounts in droves. Rational skepticism and partial empathy. Located in, through it all, a change occurred. No longer was this merely a news item. An ideological battle had broken out. Grace, according to proponents, was in order. That religious leaders had a right to the same respect for personal space and kindness that they promoted, while in other places, illness doesn't follow a schedule, and expressing something so intimate requires courage. They reminded naysayers of that. Nobody is responsible for your suffering. Your story is yours to tell in your own time. Another user added, but opponents spoke out. When you stop being honest, you break the trust. And so the lines were set. This is what happens when you build a brand on being public. They had a point. People took sides in homes, on social media, and in religious institutions. Occasionally polite, occasionally not. Because she persisted in her faith despite suffering, Joni was admired by many. By concealing her illness for so long, the leader had made a mistake. According to some, Doug was navigating a precarious situation. Someone would alter his remarks whenever he spoke in public. Even if he had hope, they would say he was downplaying the problem. Someone would accuse him of being overdramatic whenever he expressed sadness. No longer was there a secure method of communication. The stillness itself, scoffed at, seeing Joni's legacy called into doubt was, arguably, the most heartbreaking aspect. Dyer was guided by her fiery vision for more than 20 years. A strong thing that offered hope to millions was something she had made. And now, just when she needed support the most, people were betraying her like if nothing had changed prior to this point in time. But the backers refused to budge. Messages of support were poured into Dyer from all directions. Hashtag were born. Prayer live streams were hosted by them. All over the nation, churches observed moments of quiet to remember. Hey there, Joni. Many wrote heartfelt messages, sent flowers, and sent cards to tell her how her broadcasts had lifted their spirits during tough times. A woman's message started to spread when she posted, "You walked with me through my cancer. I'll walk with you through yours." Become heard over all else. Both the criticism and the compassion remained. Perhaps the most important thing was that one woman's struggle had shattered a glass ceiling in the Christian world, making everyone wonder what it truly meant, is to take the lead, to build trust, and to publicly display humanity. Whispers had started the firestorm. Opinions drove its growth. However, it did show a straightforward yet nuanced reality. Religious leaders are also human beings. He bleeds. Unfortunately, they shatter. They have a hard time knowing when to talk and when to keep silent. There is no manual for when everything goes wrong, regardless of the size of the platform. Despite the fact that Doug's revelation may have set the storm in motion, it also granted him the freedom to feel, particularly anger, feeling down, bewildered, and truthful all at once. Maybe it was the one thing everyone needed most in society where everything is edited, curated, and filtered. Something real, even if it hurt. Dyer was more than a mere Christian television network. For a long time, there they found solace, religion, and a sense of belonging. Joanie Lamb was the center of attention. I felt stable, almost unmoved, in her company. Like a friend's voice, hers floated through the living room TVs. Whenever she spoke, it was usually just as someone wanted them. No one doubted her. They joined her in her prayer. They sobbed alongside her. And for many, her curriculum was a foundation upon which they based their spiritual cycles. It was so immediately apparent when Joni started to discreetly fade from view. Initially, it was understated. Some broadcasts she failed to watch, and then some more. Her appearance was marked by fatigue. Her smile remained, though it was gentler. Her once bright and powerful voice now held a different tone. Oddness pervaded. Audience members started posing inquiries. Had she vanished? Why didn't she say anything about the rumors? How did she do? Then word got out. Many were relieved when her husband, Doug Weiss, verified what everyone had suspected. Joni was fighting an aggressive autoimmune disease. Her physical health wasn't the only thing that the ministry had suffered because of it. A turning point was marked by the confession, which was designed to bring clarity. Since Joni was no longer the focal point, Dyer had to confront an uncomfortable truth it had evaded for far too long. When a ministry's public face can't take it anymore, what happens? A change in atmosphere had occurred within the network's control room. Workers who had known Joni for a long time made their way through the corridors with a little more silence. Some people felt as though something was missing from a once perfect puzzle because she wasn't there. The lights remained on, the programs continued to air, and the cameras continued to roll. Still, a more fundamental shift had occurred. Host and producer weren't the only roles Joni played. To put it simply, she had been vital. She had a gift for remembering anniversaries, a way with words when ratings fell, and the ability to inspire her team with her inspiring vision. Things were hazy without her daily guidance. In places where he could, Doug stepped in. Of all things, he was no stranger to the ministry. His background included years of counseling, public speaking, and being there for others on their paths. However, concerning Joni's position at Dyer was distinct. It wasn't as simple as joining a squad. He was entering a room designed to accommodate the presence of another. The audience felt as though they knew this person very well. Several viewers warmed up to Doug right away. They valued his honesty, particularly following his disclosure of Joni's illness. Instead of viewing him as a substitute, they thought of him as a husband filling the void. Some people, however, were doubtful. Joni was missed. They longed for her charisma, her enthusiasm, and her unique voice, confidently and gracefully into their lives. A tense atmosphere developed even in the shadows. In the boardrooms and planning sessions, People started talking quietly. Who would take the helm in Joni's absence? Were Doug able to lift the sustain over time? Is it necessary to have a new trainer? Is it time for the network to move away from a top-down structure and adopt a more decentralized one? The children of Joanie were the focus of attention for some. Her son, Jonathan, was already preoccupied with the role in the ministry. His dedication to the Daystar caused shone through in his passionate and clear speeches. The opportunity, however, was not without its accompanying strain. The audience wanted more than just a competent leader. Their ideal candidate would have Joni's emotions. Asking something of someone was extremely challenging. Rebecca and Rachel, her daughters, came next. Each held in high regard on its own. Those who were acquainted with the family adored both. However, they had opted for milder routes, with a focus on the background rather than the foreground. It also didn't feel appropriate to put them in the spotlight. It grew more difficult to disregard the crossroads as time went on. The ministry started to feel the pinch financially when Joni wasn't there. A great deal. People who knew and trusted Daystar personally were the ones who rallied behind her. Her fundraising calls on television weren't the only ones. Those were times of deep emotion. People who watched didn't feel like they were handing over money to a business. It was as if they were assisting a friend in carrying out God's mission. However, some longtime fans started to distance themselves now that she was away, and there was doubt in the air. We saw a slowdown in donations. A steady stream of inquiries arrived via email. Was Joni planning to return? Now who was in charge? Is she essential to the mission's success? Some deeper question lay under all those surface-level inquiries. Joni was Dyer's soulmate. That wasn't just a question for viewers. Uncertainty permeates even the Lamb household. Kept going. There were muttering arguments, divergent perspectives, and uncertainty. It wasn't for lack of faith. Rather, everyone was aware of the truth. Unprepared for and uninvited into a new season, they found themselves thrust into it, an uncontrollable one. That was something Joni struggled with in her own time as well. Her loved ones remarked that she had a hard time dealing with the shame of retreating as much as with her health. She had devoted the most of her life to serving, constructing, and guiding. Her body was now begging her to calm down, and her soul wasn't accustomed to that. But hope remained with her. Perhaps, she thought, God was using the season to build something new rather than destroy it. Perhaps Dyer was no longer required to serve as an embodiment of her. Perhaps it has the potential to transcend the boundaries of any one individual. Nevertheless, optimism was unable to alleviate the suffering. The length of the intersection grew longer as the months passed. Outside leadership was advocated for by certain employees. Perhaps a new perspective from someone from a different Christian background could be able to assist in continuing the network. Some people thought the family should keep it in-house because they thought the ministry's DNA wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of outsiders. Even the audience had mixed feelings. No matter how many people wanted change or stability, the cameras never stopped rolling. Someone from a different Christian background could be able to assist in continuing the network. Some people thought the family should keep it in-house because they thought the ministry's DNA wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of outsiders. Even the audience had mixed feelings. No matter how many people wanted change or stability, the cameras never stopped rolling. Dyer continued transmitting continuously. It remained on television indefinitely. However, changes were occurring beneath the surface. There was more to leadership than counting the number of shows hosted or who sat in the chair. It all came down to vision. And now that the visionary had vanished from view, the ministry found itself in a serene yet intricate position, undeniably at a crossroads, yet not broken nor defeated. In what form would it take? Reimagining all that Joni had begun. Something in the middle, with a legacy continuing but a very different road ahead, or a continuation spearheaded by new people with new ideas. Even the Lambs didn't know all the answers. One item, though, stood out. Dyer was unable to return to the previous state of it. Everything had transformed. New media had emerged. Even the leaders had done so. Going ahead was our sole option. Even though it was wide open, the road wasn't easy. The ministry now needed to choose its future direction and the leaders it would follow.